every waking moment, all I think about is music and events. There is no backup plan. There is no alternative. This is purely it. And especially in this industry, it never stops asking for more. And there needs to be a more distinguishing line between a hobbyist and a careerist. Because if you're not a hobbyist, why are you making this your career? If you don't actually enjoy it, there's no point. A lot of these promoters, they try taking advantage of that. And they look at that and they're like, word, let's see how much we can make a bag off of this. But if you want to see their real show, you need to come see it in Delaware.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Good Soup After Dark. This is Jay, and while I have you guys here, I just want to ask you to support our other channel, The Recipe Platform. It's where we interview artists that break down the lyrics to your favorite songs. You can find us at The Recipe Platform on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. We ask that you like, subscribe, and comment on the videos and engage with us. Again, thank you for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of Good Soup After Dark. Welcome to another episode of Good Soup After Dark. I'm today's host, Jay Gonzalez. We have Morihrihart behind the cameras on the ones and twos. And today we have another very special guest. He owns his own production company, Slim Dizzle Productions. He curates these massive open mics. And I think he's setting himself up to be a pillar of the music community in Delaware as a whole. I'd like to introduce to the show, Slim Dizzle.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all for having me here today.
Absolutely, man. And before we start getting into things, I'm just going to point you to your camera right there. Just tell the people where they can find you and who you are real quick.
So you can find me on Instagram at slimdizzle.official, or you can find the production company at Slim Dizzle Productions on Instagram and all social media platforms. Oh, shit. And then you can find all the music on Spotify, YouTube, same thing under the Slim Dizzle name. Pretty easy to find, I'd say.
Awesome. We'll make sure we include all the links down in the description box below. Like I mentioned, one of the biggest things you do is you curate events. And Marie and I were actually pretty lucky to be a part of one, doing some of the media coverage. But can we get into what that is and when your next one is coming up?
So April 26th, we got the next open mic coming up, and we're trying to make this one even better because, we're getting into summertime now, so it's event season now, officially. I don't know. We're trying to get more food trucks out there. We're trying to figure out a way to get alcohol out there, and then hopefully some vendors as well. And then also we're trying to get artists to get more merchandise for themselves, so this way we can set them up with their own tables and stuff like that out there and start making some money off of this show.
And what venue is this going to be at?
The Center for the Creative Arts. And then we're starting at 6, but show's going to start at like 6:30, and then we usually run till about 11 o'clock.
Gotcha. And so the Center for Creative Arts, correct?
Yeah, yup, in Hocassin.
Was this past show in March your first one there?
No, we did one there, I think it was January 25th.
Okay. And
then this will be our third one back over at CCA.
Gotcha. And what can you talk about the venue that really kind of lends to the show and makes it, one that people want to be a part of and be a spectator at?
I think it's the stage. It's not like we're at like a regular bar or anything, or like even back in the day with the shop shows, they were great. But I feel like this just has like a certain atmosphere to it, being inside of there. And then also too, it's a bigger room to grow into. And it allows us as the production company to kind of try out different things that we couldn't do in smaller venues. So I don't know, I feel like CCA, like we're just starting it out now, getting the feel for the different spot. But I feel like this next one in April, we're going to do something pretty nice. And then moving forward, it's just going to be bigger and better.
So what is the objective with like the open mics in general? Like what are you trying to do with this? Is this a quick money grab or is it like what I say, you're trying to be a pillar in Delaware and really grow this music scene?
So for the open mic, the whole purpose is pretty much it's there for the artists. It connects us as a main line directly from the artists that are coming up, or even artists that have been around for a while. And it allows us to see them in their natural environment. And then at the same time, it gives them a space where they can come test out new work. Or if they are a newer artist, they can come out there and they can get on the stage for the first time. And it's not really spectator based, which is something we're trying to work on now, get more spectators out there. But it's definitely a big artist community. You know, so when you come out there and if you're doing your first show or if you're working on music that you don't know if you want it to be part of your album or you don't know if you want to release it, it's the perfect spot to test it. Or even in a performance sense, you know, if you're trying to work on a new choreography or if you're trying to work on a new light show or just new stage theatrics, it's the spot for it. And then you can take this on to bigger and better shows, you know, like, and then I guess as well, content, you know, it's endless content for a lot of artists, whether new or already in it, you know, and content in the modern age is kind of king. But I feel like we're definitely here to stay with the open mic. We did have a little hiatus there for a minute, but it was in finding the right venue. You know, we don't like doing things that a lot of other people have already done. We try to be as original as possible. But that's what I thought about CCA was perfect, is the fact that us being at an elementary school, or well, an old decommissioned elementary school that's now like an art center, I feel like that's us, you know, doing the unconventional and then making something out of it. And not to mention, but the room that's in it, you know, it's beautiful in there. It was a true gem in the dust, just kind of lingering. But we plan to make the open mic bigger, and then hopefully we start pushing for more spectators. The more spectators we can get, the more people just from the regular community that aren't affiliated with the music community, then we feel like the more artists are going to come out. And the more artists, the more spectators. And especially, too, you know, the more these artists come out, you watch them grow. You know, like I've seen a lot of people do their first performance or their first few performances. And then after watching them for a year and a half at performing at these open mics, you watch them start to get more fine-tuned and like more aligned with, I guess, their own artistry. You know, because you can definitely tell an artist that's been in the booth and hasn't recorded versus an artist that's had hours of stage time and then went into a recording studio. You can, I don't know, you can almost feel it, you know. So it's nice to be there too for the artist, for their growing. And then it's the community behind it. So, you know, when you come out there, you're going to meet a bunch of different artists, you know, and hopefully they're as honest as possible, you know, and they tell you, hey, I really liked it, or like, hey, I think you need to work on this.
You're talking about that artist comes, they learn how to perform on stage. Do you, or maybe, I don't know, the community that you create, give some kind of advices for artists who just the first time or second time? Because, I don't know, my opinion, it's not enough just to go on the stage, because you can be good, you can be bad. It's good if someone who have experience can tell you, hey, song is cool, but do this, this, and this, and then it's gonna touch the audience then better. How it works in your community that you create.
So I feel like it's dependent on the artist. You know, if the artist comes up, they perform and leave, that's on them, you know. But if the artist actually comes out and they start talking to people, whether before or after their performance, you know, that's where they can start getting the critique. And I feel like, too, you know, the best artists, they can take the critique and they can keep pushing with it. Whereas I've seen a lot of people, you know, they push for that critique or they want brutal honesty. And then, you know, you tell them, dude, I think you kind of tanked it tonight. And then that's it. Now you don't see them for a while. And it's like, I get it. You know, you got to go work and sharpen the sword and whatnot. But sometimes that turns into a long while. So I don't know. I feel like it's very dependent on the artist. But I'd say overall with our community, you know, especially if you ask for help, it's there. You know, if you be like, hey, you know, I seen your performance. I really thought that it was something great. You know, what did you think of mine? They'll give you an honest opinion, you know, and that's really what we tried to grow from the jump, you know, even coming back from the shop days, was we wanted something to where it was more or less for the artists and a little guild and a community for them, more so than anything. And now that we are on a bigger stage with bigger lights, now we're trying to push that to the overall community, trying to get more spectators in there and really showcase what the local Delaware talent has to offer. And then the only thing I don't like about the open mic is that I'd say we're a little bit based towards rap, which I do love the rap and hip hop, but I would like to throw more genres in there. And that's why I even bring a band out here and there. We work with 3TF and whatnot, and we've talked to a few others. And I even like doing that too because it puts bands to the test. Not every band can play with the rap community. Not every band can freestyle while someone's freestyling over them. So that's what makes, kind of merging them together perfect. And I've thought about doing more mergers, having more bands in there or other acts. But I don't know. I think the open mic's always going to be a rap and hip hop oriented or R&B as well, open mic. And now the rock, I love it. I think it makes for a great addition. But if I start adding too much of it, now it becomes, I don't know. If you were a regular spectator watching, it becomes too much of just everything thrown at you. There's no consistency there for the event to follow. So we do want to do like a battle of the bands and start moving into like a rock open mic, I guess you could say as well. But we just want to rebrand it differently because, we don't want to kick all the rock people out of the open mic and then give them nowhere to go. So we want to do something along the lines of it. We haven't exactly worked out all the specifics, but we have a good rough idea of what we plan to do for the rock community as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can definitely understand like the challenges of like merging the two genres together or broad genres together because like they're both pretty broad. I mean, you could have some rock acts that work really well with hip hop, and like vice versa. But I mean, I'm not gonna want to watch some like drill rap and then like a Def Cab for Cutie like look alike. You know what I mean? So I get where you're coming from with that. I don't know. Def Cab for Cutie was like the first softest one I could think of. There's no shade, but
yeah, something like that to where it's just for the spectators. Even I feel like it's a lot. If you go from like a heavy rock to like an R&B slow down. Yeah. And then if I give you a drill rapper right after, and then we go back to R&B, and then back to like an alternative, there's few people I feel like where, they are about all genres of music, but there's some people that they are very few genre specific. They want to listen to rap and hip hop, or they want to listen to rock and metal and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, they might slip over to a genre here and there, and like you said, there's some bands that blend well with hip-hop, and there's some hip-hop artists that blend well with bands. But not all of them. Not as a whole. It doesn't work like that.
Kind of going a little bit deeper into that, I want to segue into, like, because I have a lot of curiosities about, like, running an open mic specifically. I guess first question I would ask is, why so much an open mic as opposed to like a showcase or like a specifically curated show?
So now we do plan to do a lot of curated shows here soon. We're actually pushing to work with a few different artists, both rock and rap artists. And we really want to get into that. And not only just a curated show, but everything behind it. We want to do the theatrics. We want to do choreographed lights. We want to make it a real entertainment spectacle for Delaware, to where anyone, whether you're in the music community or not, it's something to definitely witness. But as for the open mic, we didn't want to do it as a showcase because I felt like showcases had a bad rep. They were charging too much at the door. They were very based on, I guess, your mass appeal, how much attention you had. That's what made a lot of people, damn these hiccups, but that's what made a lot of people, pay attention to certain people. Or I guess that's wrongfully said, but, if you have a big following and you're applying for a showcase, they'll easily give you that, versus if you only got 500 followers, you might be waiting 30 days for a reply, and I feel like that's just the kind of connotations that go with a showcase. And not to mention, too, I feel like with the showcase, it should be kind of curated. Like you're showcasing something, Whereas I feel like with the open mic, there is no curation. We try to give everyone the same opportunity. So because of that, we always branded it as the open mic instead of doing it as like a showcase. And also, I guess it's our way to be different. There's not many open mics left. And then even with the flyers, we tried doing a different approach with that. So where a lot of people, you see flyers where they're cutting out the artist and putting it over some stadium crowd, or like there's some black and like big bright lights or something behind it, and there's a lot of contrast. We didn't like that. I didn't like having like 30 different artists on a flyer. You don't see that when you go to a big concert. You already know who the you're going for. And not to mention too, but at an open mic or a showcase, I think it looks sloppy. A regular spectator wouldn't be drawn to that. They'd be like, I just see 30 dudes and a shit ton of names that I've never heard of before. So in a way to kind of change the paradigm, I guess, we wanted to be as minimalistic as possible. Just straight cut to the point, black background or maybe some real minimal background, and then put the gremlin on it, put the time, date, the address. Just make it look good with as minimal objects or effects or anything like that as possible. And I feel like, too, that's another reason that it drew a big crowd, because right from your first impression, it's different. It's not like everything else that you're seeing, which is what we really try to push for in Delaware, is originality. The more originality we have, I think the more as a state, we'll grow.
So no flyers with your face on it anytime soon?
Never. No, see, I don't even, calling it Slim's open mic is really as much as I like to even brand myself on it. Because I feel like that's the other issue too. You see a lot of showcases, and whoever's hosting it, they'll get all these artists out, but it's really just a showcase for themselves. Now they're promoting themselves or their brand or their group or camp or whatever, the artist. I didn't like that. I don't want to draw all these people here and then make it feel like, oh, I tricked you into a Slim Dizzle concert. Now I'm going to do a 20-minute set while everyone else has 2 songs. I really just call it Slim's open mic so people know it's mine. But other than that, I really try to remove myself from it as much as possible so all the artists kind of have a chance in the spotlight. And that's another thing too we want to push into is doing specific Slim Dizzle shows and kind of doing my own actual thing. But the open mic, it's always been for the artist, and I tend to keep it that way.
Now, I've like before we started talking, like I brought up like I've watched like another interview you did, Kaylin's visuals.
Yeah. Yep.
And one of the big things that you brought up quite a bit, honestly, was like the price point and like your objective of not price gouging the artist, but to really just kind of build a community for them. I want to get a little more into that. Like, why? I mean,
because it happens so much. So before I actually got into doing my own shows, I was an artist going around to all these showcases, paying $20, $40, $50, $70. It's fucking insane. Like, for what? To go run around at a bar? Like, at that point, I could fucking contact the bar owner myself and just be like, dude, let me do my own fucking show. Pay maybe a couple $100, and then now it's mine, So, I don't know. I think it's fucking ridiculous to have that many shows. Like, it's not even just one person. It's almost like a standard. And then they're always asking for, we want you to bring this many people, or, oh, well, you got to pay $40 a song because the demand is high or whatever. And that's cool, I get that. But at the same time, I don't. From an artist's point of view, I think that's a scam, especially when everyone's doing the same fucking venue, or like they're offering you the same show with the same exact people, and that's why, like, I feel like there has to be a certain standard of this is what a $5 show is worth. This is what a $10 show is worth. This is what a $20 show is worth. And because there isn't that standard, a lot of these artists, they'll be like, oh, well, fuck it, I'll pay $50 to perform one song, and then I'll do 3 songs that night, and man, maybe, hopefully, I'll get fucking 10 followers. And it's like, that's cool, but like, you spent $150 and you could have spent that on t-shirts. You could have spent that on like getting actual vinyls pressed, and that would have made you money coming back. And like, the pay to play, you got to do it at first, and that's where I feel like a lot of these promoters, they try taking advantage of that. You know, they know that, look, you're not going to do a show anytime soon unless you got a massive audience out of nowhere, or, you know, you are paying to play and like building up a fan base. And they look at that and they're like, word, let's see how much we can make a bag off of this. And then they don't put much into their show. They half-ass everything. You know, the audio sounds rough. There's no fucking lighting. I mean, they really just show up and they're like, word, let's party. And they're fucking happy because they're making all this money. Yeah. Meanwhile, the artist, and God forbid, you know, you're one of the last artists to go on. You paid however much money to perform in front of 4 people that are just as tired, if not drunk as fuck, and they may not even remember you tomorrow. So that's why with the open mic, you know, we tried to set that standard. To be like, all right, well, when we first started, it was free, you know, just to show people this is what we're doing. And we were kind of getting our bearings together, you know, and then we brought it up to $5 because I was getting filled up in fucking a week. You know, I had like 40 artists hit me up and I'm like, oh my God. And then 15 of them might bail. You know, and then I'm like, well, damn, I had another 15 artists that they would have showed up. So we had to start charging the 5. And then over at CCA, I didn't want to, but we had to start charging the 10, you know, just because we are in a bigger venue now. You know, we got a bigger production. I got staff running the show. So, you know, there's a lot more going behind it, you know, instead of just, all right, we're showing up and we're here. You know, and then we also offer the choreographed like light shows to artists, you know, because we do a lot of shows with other people, you know, whether it be rap or rock shows. So if we're at a show that you're at, you know, that'll benefit you because now you have my light show at my open mic. You got your light show at whatever show you're at. And then, you know, if you want me to come out and do a show for you, it's all right there. You know, so we've always tried to build around charging as little as possible and giving as much as possible to the artist. Whereas I feel like a lot of other promoters, they're more or less worried about making a salary, so to speak. And I just feel like that's a detriment to the music community, especially to the people who are just getting in, figuring it out.
It seems like with your, you know, what you said there, like you brought up a lot of pain points that you experienced as an artist yourself.
Oh, yeah.
You know, coming up, trying to make a name for yourself. And you even said at a certain point, like, pay to play is just part of the reality sometimes. Sometimes you have to do that. And you've taken on this responsibility, this role, to try to make this better space, you know, for artists to not go through what you necessarily went through. Was there some type of pivotal moment that made you take on that mindset of, all right, I'm going to try to run this thing as opposed to just be another musician in the scene?
So when we were doing the open mic, it was originally for a festival. We needed to meet as many artists as possible, and we wanted to give them something back. With that, we didn't realize the open mic would take off like it did. You know, we thought maybe we'd see 40, 50 people. But when we were in that shop, I think the most we ever seen was like 180, 190. And it was getting borderline. Like, I thought the cops were going to come shut us down. So that's when I kind of knew that I had to start taking the production side serious. That like, okay, well maybe, you know, we're going to do the artistry, but then now we're going to start doing the production. Because I looked at it as there wasn't really no one else doing it that was adequate around here. You know, and then, well, there are people that do good production. I shouldn't say that aren't adequate, but they're going to charge an arm and a leg. They're going to want every bit of thousands. And it's like, for an artist trying to just start out, I'm not going to say it's not impossible, but it's very unlikely. You know, so that's where we wanted to come in and then offer this kind of, I guess, the best production we can for giving an artist the platform to be on. And then, you know, we're going to get into the curated shows. Like I said, you know, we have a few planned with a few different artists. But in the overall, you know, that's kind of even the goal with the open mic, again, is a direct main line to the artist. You know, to where when I see someone that's extraordinary or even just the grit, you know, because that's the thing too, you know, seeing all these artists, I've fucking probably seen about hundreds by now. I'd say out of hundreds, only 30 don't have potential. Like they really shouldn't be on a mic. The other 70, they make good music or they might perform well, but it's up to them, you know, in the long run. So if we can be there to help them, you know, I want to see them go further. So we work with artists too based on that. Grit, if I've seen someone in it for 4 or 5 years, they're making good music, they're showing up to every show and doing something, then we want to work with them, and then see if we can't give them that push to really put it on. And then our overall look is if we can do this for multiple artists while bolstering the open mic, it makes Delaware get looked at from multiple states. I mean, in our prime, we were pulling people from Philadelphia, and we were pulling people from Baltimore and DC, almost all over the tri-state. So we're getting back into that, and if we could do it once, we could do it again. And now we want to do it for more than just the open mic, though. We want to do it for artists. And then we start making Delaware being looked at as an entertainment state. So when someone else starts a production company, it's not as hard. If an artist just says, "Fuck it, I want to throw my own shows," Delaware is kind of this hot spot to be looked at. Because we are a good melting pot of a bunch of diverse and talented musicians. We're just bad at marketing and promotion. Bad at it. But we're getting better. And I'm seeing a lot of the tides kind of turn in Delaware. Whereas people weren't that much trying to be collaborative, you could say. Everyone wanted to do it themselves. And I get that, everyone wants to be a self-starter, but even then, self-starters gotta work with other companies. It's just the way it is. And people, I think, have finally started realizing, it's not me versus you, it's us versus the country. It's Delaware's kind of gotta unite, or else no one's gonna take it serious. Then ain't no one gonna make it out the motherfucker. And we're all kind of just gonna be stuck there.
Yeah, I feel like a general theme here is too, like, you're trying to build up your state and your immediate community, not just artists in general, but like artists from like where you're from. That seems to be like really important to you.
Yeah, that's the focus. I mean, it's not that there's anything wrong with artists from Philly or Baltimore, other states. It's just in Philly, I feel like, people travel here to be artists for a reason. People travel to New York to be an artist for a reason, or LA. No one's doing that in Delaware yet because there isn't that economy there. But everyone in Delaware travels far and wide to go see shit. And I think we've even seen a taste of that with Firefly. We had people coming from California to this Firefly Festival. So if it can be done once, it can definitely be done again. And if we can put the Delaware artists on the forefront of that, that's terrific. I want to make it like how fucking New York was in the 90s, to where there's just all these rappers coming left and right out of Brooklyn, the Bronx, Harlem, that's my goal for Delaware. Because even down there in Dover, especially Dover and like Smyrna and what's that fucking town by the beach, like Lewis and all that, there really ain't much going on down there. I know dudes down there that they come an hour up our way just to fucking go to a show or maybe even see a show. So if we can eventually even start putting those artists on, because they're talented down there too. It's just their economy is even worse than Newark, Wilmington. But if we can start building the state as a whole, I think we'll start seeing tourists from all over. And especially, again, putting these artists on the forefront, making it to be like, oh, you need to come see X, Y, and Z. But they're doing, they might be out here opening in Philly or they might be opening in Baltimore. But if you want to see their real show, you need to come see it in Delaware. And I feel like it adds a draw, and it'll start building that economy.
It seems like, and I'm not saying this in any negative way, but it seems like you're really good at like finding like certain pain points and like at least trying to come up with ideas and be proactive about solving them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So like what's one thing, we'll just keep it to one thing if you want to, but like what's one thing that you think is, because like a little background, let me start that over. A little background, like Maria and I are like not even from Philly.
Okay.
Like I don't know if you could tell Maria, that's not a Philly accent. She's from Ukraine. I'm originally from New York, and we met here. We live here now, and like we work between Philly and Delaware, like Wilmington, Newark, and all that. So like we meet different people like with different opinions on it, and like at least with the Delaware artists, it really just seems like the main objective is to really put not only themselves but like their city or their state on the map. Like, what's one thing that you think is holding Delaware back from being that, like, entertainment-based, like that entertainment state you were mentioning earlier, like where entertainers come out of? And what are you doing to try to like combat that? And I know you listed a lot of what you're doing, but like, is there like a specific pain point that you see that you want to work on more?
The artist not taking it serious enough. You know, just going around the different showcases, that is not enough. You know, posting some fucking reel or two on Instagram, it's not enough. You know, it's all of these things collectively and then some, you know, and what we're trying to do is, I guess you could say them curated shows is really what we want to do to change it. Because when we start rolling these out, we want to make it the full entertainment experience. I'm really not trying to drop too much, you know, there's a lot in the works, and then there's a lot I can't talk about. People would be mad if I started exposing the show early. But we want to do a lot more theatrics and a lot more showmanship, you know, and I feel like another thing we could add is originality. You know, and this isn't really something that the artist can do much unless they do have capital to throw their own shows, or they find a production company like me who wants to throw a show with them, or they're ready to pay. You know, and even that too, with our pricing, we try not to gouge. You know, whereas another production company, they might charge you a few thousand. You know, we might charge you a few hundred. You know, and especially the more we like your music, you know, we even work out deals to where if I feel the artist truly has potential, then I'll take the show on my risk. You know, I'll put on the whole production through SDP, but we want the percentage off that, you know, and then we feel like by building this economy and artists taking it serious and understanding that them making good music just isn't enough. You know, it's making good music. It's about promoting on Instagram and Facebook. It's about doing good shows. It's about going to other people's shows and showing love and shaking faces and shit. It's about going to other shows and performing there. You know, opening up for some of the bigger acts that you can do. All of that and more. You know, so I feel like it falls under the same umbrella, though. It's just artists not taken serious enough. You know, if we had 8 or 9 artists that were truly, you know, living and breathing this, I feel like we would definitely be further as a state. And it's not that we don't have artists not living and breathing it, but I feel like even then they grow stagnant. They grow to the point to where it's like, oh, well, I've seen 20% growth. I think that's good enough, you know, or not even good enough, but I'm happy with that, you know, and I'm happy with that is the worst fucking thing you can tell yourself. And especially in this industry, you know, because this is a never-ending, what do you say it? It never stops asking for more. You know, even if I put on the best show in the world, it doesn't matter. Now you expect that from me. So now you better fucking put on another best show in the world. You know, and that's just the entertainment industry in general. So I feel like a lot of these local artists, they got to understand that. You know, it's about always one-upping yourself every day, nonstop. You know, whether it's better music or better performing. And that's really another big thing. The performances, my God. A lot of people have great music, can't perform it well. It's like an eyesore to watch on stage. Not everybody. And that's actually why I'm blessed about the open mic. You know, I'd say majority have good artists, and I feel happy about that. Because, you know, the better the music, the better I mix it. You know, because I'm feeling it, I'm vibing with it, you know, and then the better my light guy and the audio guy are helping me mix and do the light shows and shit. So, I don't know. I feel like performance-wise, people need to rehearse. And they don't need to rehearse where they're talking like this, mumbling. Like, they need to actually rehearse it with their full voice in a big open room, dance around as if you were on the stage. Because then it becomes muscle memory. You know, when you go out there, then you're not thinking about it. Then you can focus on doing cooler shit. Being like, oh, well, I usually do this, but what if I do this instead? You know, and I feel like the more artists do that, then the better we'll be off as a community. Because then we can start preaching to the spectators and not just other people in the music community.
I want to ask, sometimes I have a feeling that sometimes people want to do this, like artistic, sing, or in my situation, draw and paint, but reality punched in the face and said, hey, you need to actually work, you must have family, you have like kids or whatever, and that not able to sustain your life as you usually do with a regular job, but with your art makes people feel like, oh, maybe it's gonna be enough. Well, I have 20 subscribers for a year. That's enough. It's good. They listen to my music, so they just like pivot to the like, it's just like a hobby. Do you do music a full time? Put all the efforts you have towards creation, or you also have something that you like balanced in between?
Every waking moment, all I think about is music and events. There is no backup plan. There is no alternative. This is purely it. And now, from a hobbyist standpoint, I understand that 100%. I play guitar, I play piano. I don't think I'm going to be no Mozart or no Bach. So in that sense, enjoy it. That's just for you. That gives me a break to where it's like, oh shit, I've been on the phone all day with business, or I've been sitting here writing music and raps all day. Maybe I'll just go downstairs and play some shit that somebody's already written, and I just want to hear it in person. And I feel like there's nothing wrong with that. But I think there is, and there needs to be a more distinguishing line between a hobbyist and a careerist. And I feel like there's a lot of people, you can work a job and sustain a family and still do this as a career. It's just hard as fuck, because now you got an 8-hour, 10-hour day job. Then you got to come home. You got to put on a whole second life, like not a second life, but it is at the same time. You're going out, you're getting show ready now. Now you're running rehearsals. Or even if you're not getting show ready, you coming home, you need to be rehearsing, or you need to be writing, you need to be working on different promotion tactics or things like that. So I feel like it's definitely doable, but there does need to be a distinguishing line between the hobbyist and the careerist. And I feel like that's where a lot of Delaware gets messed up. A lot of people think that, man, I'll be able to, and I wouldn't even put it as a quantitative thing of, oh, well, you need to write 3 songs a week, or you need to write 5 songs a week. Because there might be weeks where, I write half of one. There might be weeks where I'm just in the mood and I'm writing 3 or 4, but it's about finding something to do. It's like that bartender mentality. I look at it. If you got time to lean, you got time to clean. So if you're doing this as a careerist, that's same principle. If you got time to sit around, you got time to do something, whether it's let me make the Instagram look better, or let me work on a new logo, or let me work on some merchandise, anything, or even contacting other artists, being like, hey, I really like what you're doing. I want to collaborate with you. There's always something that needs to get done. If you're really looking for something to do or you can't find nothing, there's always contract law to study up on. It's boring as shit and it's litigious as hell, but it's shit we need to know.
You want to get into that a little bit?
Well, like contract work?
Yeah, contract law.
So there's really, every contract's a little bit different, but just learning about, okay, well, these are my music contracts, or even like understanding it with your distributor. People where, if you're a producer, your BeatStars contract. I know a bunch of producers to where they don't understand, okay, well, this is the standard of what BeatStars is doing, and it can be adjusted, but I'm guaranteed 50% of the publishing rights to this song. Some producers don't even know what the that means. So there's always fine business stuff to brief up on. Same thing with artists, understanding the difference between performing and publishing, mechanical rights, I feel like all of the contracts, and like when I say contract law, I'm more or less meaning the contracts that you are going to be dealing with. If you're going to be, like, even for my instance, you're going to do a show with me in a production. Okay, well, there's going to be an agreement on both ends, where I'm going to be guaranteeing these lights and this audio, but I want you there at fucking 4:30, where I expect this much promotion from you, because I don't want to just throw the show and leave it all up to me to promote it, so, and that's a real minor one, but when you start getting into bigger things, like I tell artists all the time, if fucking Live Nation or Warner or Sony came up to you and said, I want to give you $2 million right now, you're not going to know how to read that contract. Instantly, you're going to have to go to a music lawyer. you know, and then you ask a lot of artists, do you even know where to look for a music lawyer? And they don't, you know, and I mean, it's even hard finding them. Like, I look for them from time to time, you know, and they're either $20,000-$30,000 or it's some bullshit scam, you know. So I don't know, looking into stuff and even just knowing it, you know, because even if you do hire a lawyer, you still want to know it. It's like your taxes, you know, you just don't want to hand it over to somebody and be like, here, help me. You know, even if you don't understand it fully, you should know at least the basis, you know, to where if you get in a room to where it's a lawyer and a lawyer, it's not, you don't feel like a kid in an adult conversation. You know, you at least say, okay, so I'm getting this much, you know, or like, again, we'll bring it back to the 50% publishing, you know, with like the producers. You know, artists might look at that. Like when I first seen it as an artist, I'm like, you're getting 50% of my music? Are you fucking insane? Like what? Like I bought this beat from you and I put it in the lyrics and I went to the studio and I even mixed and mastered it myself. But then you look at it, okay, it breaks down to about 5% overall, you know? So it's just getting there and reading up on stuff, you know? And then I guess even I try to look at stuff like, for instance, Disturbed just had a show to where they were in Chicago and they lit Michael Jordan's banners on fire with their pyrotechnics. I was quite curious who the fuck is liable for this. You know, is it Disturbed? Is it the production company that came in there? Is it the pyrotechnic company that came in there, but that was contracted through the production company? You know, this kind of stuff matters, especially on the back end of shows, you know, because we want to elevate our production company as high as possible. You know, so when we do get on the bigger shows where we got lasers and pyrotechnics and scaffolding for a stage, we want to make sure we come proper with our I's dotted and T's crossed.
So it's actually a business. So you artist, you a businessman. Like if you do the music, you must be everything. You must understand how good music you buy, for example, from a beat maker, or you create. You must understand where to go to record this correctly, because good recording half of the success, and the second part is show. How do you perform? You must know how to read the contracts. You must know what kind of like stones under the water for you not step and not slip. So you just have so much steps to just to be an artist. Yeah. Now it's more understandable why you like do this open mics, why you help artists, young artists is like, I'm trying to say, not young like a kids, but young like who just started. That's have more sense, because in the beginning I just like, why you do this? What's the point to help do something that you do? You can just do it for yourself. You can just grow your own business, and like you don't need to give the opportunity to other. Like, you know, sometimes people like, it's mine. I know how to do this. I'm going to share it. It's mine. But now I understand it's like, it's so much steps. Yeah. And you deal it with by yourself, or you have someone who just like show you the direction?
So we have staff that helps us throughout the show, you know, because we're trying to get to the point to where we have a few staff members trained to where when we do these curated shows, everything's executed flawlessly. But other than that, it pretty much is just me behind everything. I've taken advice, though, from a lot of people. You know, a lot of people have pointed me in the right direction and stuff. But from all the decisions that the company makes, it is just me behind it at the moment. You know, and there was even a point in time where when I was first starting the company, you know, we had 3 or 4 people that wanted to be involved with it. And the first dude, he quit quick. The second dude, he ended up jumping out. And then the third dude, there was a bad contract that we signed. And he said something along the lines of, well, it's not my name on it. And I was like, fuck. And it was kind of scary there for a minute to be like, damn, there's no one here to guide me no more. You know, this is just me doing this company now. But after a while, it almost became empowering. It was like, we got this, we figured it out, we're getting our bearings, and now I don't have to answer to nobody, and I always try to keep an open mind because you never know what you could learn from where. But at the same time, being able to make that executive decision, it's the reason why we do have such a low price. Everyone on my board, when we first started and wanted to do the open mic, when it was just speculation, they all wanted to be like everyone else. Oh, well, they're charging 20, we could charge 15. And it's like, we have no credibility. Fuck you mean charging 15? Like, let's just do it for free. Let's show the artist first. Then we'll charge them. And even they got mad at that because when the first one, we did December, January, and February free. And they were pissed. But at the end of the day, they walked away at that point. Well, they were there, but they weren't at the same time. And then by the time I started charging, I didn't even want them a part of it no more. I told them, this is mine now. And then I felt like it was wrong. Like, I feel like as a musician, it's your due diligence to help other musicians. Maybe I feel like that comes from a lot more of like the rock and the jazz community. Rap does get very self-centered. The egos tend to get high, and yeah, you got rap groups and whatnot, but that's few and far between, especially in Delaware. I don't see any rap groups, but I feel like as a musician overall, if you're not just trying to be famous, because I feel like that's the other issue we have, is a lot of people, they're just doing this to make a quick bag or to be famous, even from the artist standpoint. We got promoters, like we talked about, trying to make a quick bag from a party, but artists are on the same thing. I feel like to really do this, you should be a hobbyist while at the same time being a careerist, because if you're not a hobbyist, why are you making this your career? If you don't actually enjoy it, there's no point. So to anyone that is a true musician, I feel like they should be helping out others as much as possible. And that even shocked me too. When I was an artist, I'd be asking people for features and they'd be like, I want $500. I'm like, what do you mean 500? Like, let's just make fucking music, and some people I do get, there's a supply and demand there, and that happens as you move up through the industry. But at the same time, if someone's making good art, I'm not going to charge them shit. I just want to work with them, and I feel like that's how it should be. So for the case of the open mic, that was kind of my look at giving back, and well, there's a lot of reasons, but that's kind of how I look at it as well. It connects me with the artist. If I see someone that's good and talented and driven, I make note of that, and then I even give them as much, I even give them as much advice as possible, to where if there is another showcase, I'll point them in that direction. If there's a venue they should look into, I'll try telling them about it, and other artists are like that too, and I see it in the group chats that we have. They're all sitting there asking, are you doing this show? Are you going to that show? But, yeah, I don't feel as if all the promoters are on the same page as that. I feel like the promoters were musicians or wanted to be musicians or rappers, and they're not now. And now they're like, how can I make money off of the ones that are trying? And I feel like there's not all bad out there in Delaware. Like even that's why I'm so affiliated with Rainbow Records. I feel like what Melissa's doing over there with OMAD is it's more of a band and a rock stuff, but she's focusing on everything eventually, to where they're getting more original artists coming in instead of doing cover bands. So like how bars do a cover band every Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Let's get these guys in here, and almost making like a union for Delaware artists. And I like shit like that heavy, where you get people like Chris Anthem out here, where he does his open mic at the Baby Grand, and that shit's amazing. I mean, truthfully, I think he's the only dude with a bigger stage than mine at a point when he's in the Baby Grand room. Sometimes he's in the side room, but even then, the way he runs his event, you can tell he's actually there for people, and even with events like that, I like the originality. We both call ourselves an open mic, but they are two different events. You know, you come to mind, you are getting more of that rap, that drill, you know, that like high energy, you know, but that's more of the poetic side, you know, and like comedians and stuff like that. And we've even shared people, you know, where it's like, yo, look, I kind of turned away this comedian. Like, you know, this ain't the spot for them. My open mic just isn't it. But I think they would flourish at your spot, you know, or he's put people on the mind, be like, yo, you need to go check out his spot. 'Cause if you got that turn up energy, like, this is for you. So, and there's a bunch of other people, you know, but it'd take forever to name them all. It's not all dark and gloom out there, you know.
Of course not.
But I feel like we just need more of it. And those people that are doing good, you know, it's more than just about doing good. It's about taking the forefront. You know, because there are a lot of scammers out there. And it's kind of just who the artist finds first. You know, like if there's an artist out there and he's paying $50 a song, $40 a song, and he does this for a year before I can get to him or anyone good can get to him, he might be done. He might just give up at that point. And now, who knows? Now that's somebody that might have helped make Delaware great and broke the state out in a national view. Or it might have been somebody bad, but it's the fact we'll never know because they got scammed every step of the way. Or even they move, and now they're just like, fuck it, I'll move into Philly or move into Baltimore and try there because Delaware isn't working for me. So we need to foster a more, I guess, creative community that's really for the people. And then at the same time, too, I look at it, you'll never have a spectator if you're barely pleasing the artist. You know, if the artists are coming to your show and they're talking shit and they're not enjoying it, why would a spectator come to watch 20 people they've never heard of? Like, that doesn't even sound enjoyable. And then you're going to fucking make me spend $20, $25 at the door. Like, then the artist is stuck in a bad spot. You know, how am I going to promote a show to him if I take him once, and in the first show, it's like, dude, you made me watch 18 people and you went on the last. Like, come on, man. You know, like, that doesn't seem fun. So now they're not going to promote those shows. And then the promoters are mad, oh, why aren't you bringing people? You're not giving them nothing to promote. You know, they feel bad about it. And I don't know. I feel like that's a few of the issues that we have here in Delaware.
And you're just doing your part to combat that and make a more flourishing place for artists.
Trying to.
I think, like, with your platform that you're building, and Marie and I kind of come from a similar place where, like, you know, of course, like, we want to make money doing what we do, you know, but like, to kind of come out the gate and be like, how can I make money? Like, what's the fastest way to make money? It just seems to get in the way of more of, like, what you're trying to make. And I think with, like, the platform that you're building and, like, you trying to put certain things on the forefront over making the money, I think the money's just going to come eventually, right? Like you said, you're going to work, you're building your network, you're building your brand. You're going to move towards more curated shows that maybe you can charge a little bit more for because this is guaranteed to be a really good show. It's not an open mic. Not to say an open mic's not a good show, but a curated show is geared to be a better show. And, like, I think just kind of, like, opening yourself up to artists, building that network, building that brand. Like, other people might take notice, maybe sponsors down the line. And that's kind of like where Marie and I are coming from, like the podcast. And, like, now we started this new platform, like The Recipe, where we're doing kind of more like artist-based interviews around the music that they're making. We don't want to pass the cost on to the artist. Like, I have no problem calling Marie an artist. You can see everything back here. That's all hers. I feel a little self-conscious calling myself that, but we are, like, you know, like, we're artists. We don't make a lot of money doing what we do, but we do it because we love to. And we're hoping that by just kind of taking our energy, like you said, you have a spare moment. Like, if I have a spare moment, I'll make something on Photoshop and do, like, a quick collage to post on the Instagram. Or I'll make a quick 15-second, 30-second clip off of a performance that I recorded 3 or 4 months back and try to make something out of that. Or, like, we just record our own stuff and, you know, we have a podcast. We have our, like, side show, which is just me and Marie. And, like, just trying to get better at the craft. And, like, get better at specifically what we do, like interviewing people and making artists and other people feel comfortable being in front of a camera. we think that's just going to, down the line, now, I mean, down the line could be a far way off, and sometimes that journey seems long as hell, and it's really scary sometimes, but like, I think we kind of align with our objectives in that way. Like, not necessarily like what's the fastest way to get money, but what's the fastest way to grow your name, to get people to feel comfortable working with you, so that money can come down the line, and then you can finance. And like what you've said in the past, like, you reinvest everything you make into the productions, because it's really easy to take that money and buy yourself something nice, right?
Yeah,
But maybe for you, that something nice is better lights, better sound equipment.
All day. I mean,
in a way, you're still doing that. You're buying yourself something nice, but it's really for your objective.
Yeah, it writes off on taxes nice.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, that's always the goal, you know, is just reinvest. And I feel like too, you know, you see a lot of companies, they take it and they dip. You know, and that's what I'm talking about with the quality of the show. You know, I feel like we're always making it better. And that's the most important thing. You know, even with artists, you know, even if an artist goes out and they perform, they get paid $400 to perform for the night. You know, don't fucking just take the $400 and blow it on a bottle and some bud. You know, go out there and go make T-shirts or use that for gas money to get to the next one. Mm-hmm. You know, the minute people start looking at it like a business, it flourishes. You know, and most businesses, you don't really start getting a draw till like 3 years, 4 years. You know, when you start looking at it from that point, it sucks. It does. It's like you said, it's a long road till we start making money. But along the way, you know, if you build a credible name that has a nice reputation and people know that when I call this company or when I work with this company, I'm getting everything I pay for, it makes it worth it. You know, and then now, you know, even your customers know it's like, well, they have to charge. You know, they're doing this top tier work. Like, I get it, you know, and I feel like if you can always charge any price the first time, and that's how a lot of these promoters get away with it, you know, charging $70, $80 a fucking song to perform. But if they find a reason to bitch, it's over. They're not coming back, you know, but if they can't find one reason, I feel like at least 80% of the time they'll be back. And they'll happily be back. And they'll tell people, and they'll even tell the skeptics, you know, oh, it's too much money. I'm telling you, man, it's worth it. You know, every time I work with them, it's amazing. And then there's a lot of competition. You know, like if you don't reinvest, like I look more than just Delaware, you know, you look at some of these venues like the Fillmore in Philly, like they got so much crazy shit. Like it's insane. And like, yeah, I'm not going to have no Fillmore lighting in the next month. But hell, if we keep reinvesting over and over, maybe in a year or two, we got enough to make it look better. So it depends.
Well, Slim, we're looking forward to the event, April 26th.
April 26th.
It's a Saturday, right?
Yep. Yes, sir.
6:30 to 11?
It's all 6 to 11, but yeah, we'll say 6:30 because you know how people be.
But we appreciate, you know, you coming to sit here, you know, talking about the events that you're doing and just kind of give us a little more background and insight to, like, you know, how your mind works when it comes to running these events. Again, we appreciate you and your time. Before we close off, I do want to point to your camera again, let the people know where to find you.
You can find me on Instagram at slimdizzle.official, or you can go on my website at slimdizzle.productions.
Well, again, we appreciate the time. Picture time.
2, 3. Kicking real wicked cause you know I got style. What you gotta say cause I'm running for a mile. Always got game, know I'm insane cause I'm wicked motherfucker and I'm straight to the brain. 38 slug, straight to his chest. Talking all this shit but he know that I'm the best. And I put him to his rest and I'm going real easy. Man, my name's Slim but you should know I'm real sleazy.